Did you know even if you have a $590 Part D deductible, you could still pay zero copay for all your prescriptions all year? Hi, I'm Larry Goist, owner of LMS Insurance Group, where we help seniors navigate the Medicare Maze. So in today's short video, I'm telling you guys all about the Part D drug deductible, and we're gonna go over three real basic topics. So number one, I'm gonna tell you exactly how that drug deductible works. Number two, I'm gonna tell you when it actually applies. And then thirdly, I'm gonna give you a few tips on how you could save money on prescription drugs if you're on Medicare, and that's all coming up next. Hey, before I dive in, don't forget to like our channel. Definitely subscribe if you find this helpful. I really appreciate you doing that. Okay, so how does the deductible work? Well, if you have a deductible on Part D, the maximum allowed is $590. And a deductible means the amount that you must pay before the insurer is going to kick in and pay a percentage of the drug or pay all the drug. So Part D plans and Medicare Advantage plans can have a deductible anywhere from $1 all the way to $590 if they so choose. But usually when people see this, it'll steer them away from a plan, or it'll make them say, well, I have this large deductible, I don't want that plan. And a lot of times people don't realize that deductible, it would never apply to them anyway. Now, if you do have a deductible, it's an annual one-time deductible. So once it's met, it's met. Meaning if your deductible was $500, if you paid the first $500, your deductible is gone for the year. It's over. You would then be in the copay stage. So you wouldn't have to continue to meet a deductible on different drugs. If you've met the deductible is met, even if new drugs come into your formulary down the road. And then drug deductibles reset on January 1st. So if you started a plan on December 1st and paid the deductible, you would have to repay it again the next month because Medicare works January 1 to December 31. They don't care when your plan started. The deductibles all reset on January 1st of the next year. Okay, so that's generalized information about how the deductible works. But to understand really how the deductible works, you have to understand when it actually applies. So that's what we're going to go over now. When would you have to pay that drug deductible? So the key here is each prescription drug plan has a formulary, which is it's just a list of covered drugs. On the formulary, they assign a tier to each drug. Usually those are tiers 1 through 5 or 1 through 6. This is the starting point, okay? Because the plan you have, you will only have to pay deductible usually on certain tiers. So the plan will say you pay deductible if it's a tier 3, 4, or 5 drug. Or it could say you'll pay deductible but only if it's a tier 4 or 5 drug. So your starting point is you need to check, number one, what tiers does the deductible apply to? And then number two, you need to check your prescriptions and see what tier that company has your prescriptions. Because there's certain companies that have a name brand as a tier 2, and there's other companies that'll have that same exact name brand as a tier 5. So each plan's formulary is unique, and they can classify those drugs anywhere they want in those 5 or 6 tiers. So let me give you an example, okay? Let's say you have a $500 drug deductible, but it only applies to tier 3 drugs. And you begin the year and you have 2 basic generics. You take atorvastatin and you take amlodipine. Those are 2 of the most common generic drugs that my clients take. Most plans offer those drugs at zero copay. Even if you have a $500 deductible, those drugs, atorvastatin and amlodipine, are going to be tier 1 or tier 2 drugs, meaning you do not have to pay deductible. So if you don't pay deductible, what do you pay? Well, you would pay the fixed copay. So your plan would say a tier 1 drug is X amount of copay. A tier 2 drug is XY amount of copay. So most plans offer those drugs for no copay. So imagine January you fill atorvastatin and amlodipine, no copay, no copay. February, no copay, no copay. But in March, you're put on an inhaler, right? You have COPD, you have a new inhaler. Most inhalers are going to be tier 3 or up. Let's say that inhaler is Trilogy, okay? It's tier 3. So you have to pay the $500 deductible. You go to fill Trilogy, you owe the first $500, the deductible, and then you owe the copay. So if your company charged $47 for a tier 3, Trilogy would be $500 plus the $47. You'd get Trilogy for $547. The next month when you filled, you've already met your deductible. So now you go back to the pharmacy, Trilogy just costs $47, your copay. You've already paid deductible, now you're just paying the copay. And amlodipine and atorvastatin were zero copay from day one because your plan didn't charge deductible on tier 1 or tier 2 drugs. So this is the most understood part about Medicare plans, that when people see that deductible, sometimes they run from the plan not realizing it was never going to apply to them in the first place. So I made a short video so you could visualize this. I'm going to walk you through how a tier 3 looks on Medicare.gov. If you want to understand your drug costs on Medicare, it all starts with the deductible. And on this plan, we have a $200 annual deductible. So the most important thing is that plans charge deductible on what tier of drug. So they'll say, we charge a deductible on tier 3, 4, and 5. That's what this plan says. So not tier 1, 2, or 6. And I put in Ozempic, which is a tier 3, and amlodipine, which is a tier 6. So that's your first thing, is what's the deductible? And then know what tiers you'd have to pay the deductible. And again, it's a one-time a year, so it's not per drug. If you've met the deductible with one prescription, you've met it for all of them. You don't pay it per prescription. Okay, so now that we know the tiers, then you can go look and see what the plan charges per tier. Tier 1, 0 for 3 months. Tier 2, 0 for 3 months. Tier 3, 131 for 3 months, which is what Ozempic is. But that's after deductible. So you can see here, after your $200 deductible, Ozempic would be $131 for a 3-month supply. And then your amlodipine is tier 6, 0 copay. So we'll go look at those up top and see if it matches. Yep. So Medicare.gov says, here, Ozempic, if you've paid deductible, would be $131. But if you hadn't, it's $2,800. Don't worry, you don't pay the whole $2,800. So what you would really pay, now I'm shooting this in August of 25, so Medicare.gov assumes you're going to fill your prescriptions in September. What you would pay is your deductible, $200, plus you would pay that $131 copay. That's how they're getting to $329, and you're getting a little discount for the mail order, right? As you can see over here, it's exactly on $341. Okay, but your second fill here in December, it's just $131, just your copay. And again, that amlodipine was never subject to a copay before or after deductible, because it was a tier 6 drug, 0 copay at all stages. So to understand your deductible and your cost, you start with what is the deductible, and then secondly, what tiers do I have to pay the deductible on? Okay, guys, so a few tips to save money on your prescription drug coverage. So number one is that most companies will give you the absolute cheapest price if you use their preferred mail order. Now that comes in a 3-month supply. Some people don't like the mail, and you'll realize that going to a pharmacy in town for 3 months is close to the price. But generally, your cheapest price is always going to be the mail order for the company you have. Okay, number two, if you have a drug that's subject to deductible, you can ask your doctor for an alternative. Maybe he has you on a tier 3 drug, but there's an alternative that's a tier 2 on your formulary that would be just as fine for you. So you could see if your doctor can recommend a different prescription that might not be a tier that would be subject to deductible. Okay, number 3, you can apply for extra help, otherwise known as LIS. So if you have limited income and limited resources, you can get a program through Social Security that will help you pay for prescription costs. I've made several videos on this separately. I will attach those in the description below. And if none of those things work, you can go directly to the manufacturer. A lot of times there are programs available for these expensive drugs. If your income is below a certain threshold, which isn't like poverty level, it's usually much higher, but if your income's below a certain amount, you can't afford the drug, you can apply for assistance directly through the manufacturers. Okay guys, so to conclude, not all Part D plans have drug deductibles. And even if yours does, that doesn't mean you're ever going to pay it because you might not have a drug subject to deductible. Once you've met the deductible for the year, then you go to the copay stage and you're paying fixed copays the rest of the year for that prescription. And then every year on January 1st, everything resets and goes back to a fresh start. So guys, I hope this video was helpful. I'll talk to you next time. Larry Goist, LMS Insurance Group. Thanks for watching.